In our headlines on this Friday, August 28th, here in South Korea, hundreds of people are killed and many more remain missing after catastrophic flash floods swept through Nepal and neighboring Tibet, leaving rescuers racing against time to reach survivors. And a South Korean rapid response team lands in Nepal to help search for the 9 Korean nationals still missing after devastating floods, while 9 of 10 others who were stranded are airlifted to safety. In the Middle East, Iran links the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to an end to the regional war, adding a new condition to efforts by mediators to restore shipping through the strategic oil route. We start in Nepal on this Friday as rescuers search through mud-choked valleys for survivors of the fatal floods that have taken hundreds of lives. Our Moon Hye-ryun starts us off.
Rescue teams in Nepal and Tibet are racing to find more than 1,400 people still missing, 2 days after a glacier collapse unleashed catastrophic flooding along the Himalayan border. The disaster, which struck Wednesday, has killed at least 469 people in Nepal, according to local authorities. Among the missing are more than 500 foreigners from countries including the United States, India and South Korea. Many of them are believed to have been on pilgrimage routes near the border. Meanwhile, Chinese authorities have suspended rescue operations in Tibet over fears that a newly formed lake could burst its banks. Rising water has collected behind a natural barrier created by the landslide, threatening to unleash another surge into areas already devastated by the floods. For families of the missing, the wait has been agonizing. Chimindish Shrestha's 26-year-old son was driving a truck when the floodwaters hit. She says she hasn't heard from him since.
My son is stuck in the floods. He is a truck driver, and he said he was driving. And we last spoke at around 8:30. After that, there is no news of him. We are not able to find out anything.
Scientists believe the flood was triggered when a section of glacier and rock gave way high in the mountains, sending a wall of water, mud and debris crashing through the Bagmati region and into Tibet's Arirang County. The surge destroyed roads, bridges and a key border crossing, complicating rescue access. Nepal's army has evacuated workers trapped at a hydropower plant and pulled dozens of survivors out by helicopter. Authorities say more than 17,000 personnel are now involved in the search, with roughly 1,470 people rescued so far. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
And South Korea's rapid response team is in Nepal searching for the 9 missing Koreans, while 9 others who had been stranded have been airlifted to safety. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young has the latest.
9 Koreans remain out of contact in flood-hit Nepal as government and corporate teams prepare helicopters to launch search operations near the disaster site. The Foreign Ministry said Friday there still had been no contact with the 9, while a Nepalese military helicopter had flown 9 of 10 stranded Koreans from a temporary shelter to safety. The remaining Korean, a site manager at a hydroelectric power project involving Tusan Enerbility and Korea Southeast Power, stay behind with a Korean embassy staff. The project site in Nepal's northern Rasuwa district was struck by severe flooding on Wednesday morning local time, prompting Seoul to dispatch an 11-member government rapid response team. Upon their arrival on Thursday night, they began coordinating with response teams from the 2 companies. A Foreign Ministry official told reporters Friday that the Korean embassy and the companies have procured helicopters, but without permission to fly them, have not yet launched search operations. Seoul's government representative for Consular Affairs, Im Sang-woo, is also working to secure cooperation from local authorities to conduct the search. The teams plan to concentrate initially on the heavily damaged Weir Dam and workers' accommodation. Beyond rescuing Korean nationals, Seoul is also considering deploying a Korea disaster relief team to support the wider flood response, with Foreign Minister Cho Yeon saying any additional contingent could involve dozens of personnel. Cho asked his Nepalese counterpart on Thursday to fully support efforts to locate the 9 Koreans and pledged $1 million in humanitarian assistance. The Foreign Ministry on Friday announced the appointment of Park Jae-kyung as Korea's new ambassador to Nepal, with him swiftly travelling to Kathmandu over the weekend. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea, the US and Japan will take to the waters of Jeju next month for 5 days of joint defense drills, keeping their trilateral security coordination on course despite Washington's recent scaling back of some exercises with Seoul. Our defense correspondent Park Gun-woo reports.
The trilateral military exercise Freedom Edge between South Korea, the US, and Japan is set to take place for 5 days, starting September 7th in international waters near Jeju Island. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said Friday the annual exercise is aimed at responding to North Korea's nuclear and missile threats while safeguarding peace and stability in the region. While the JCS described the exercise as defensive in nature without disclosing further details, one expert says this year's drills are expected to place a strong focus on the north.
Given North Korea's recent ballistic missile launch tests, this exercise will have a strong defensive focus in preparing for those threats. Freedom Edge is a multi-domain exercise, and exercises like this are necessary to enhance interoperability among the 3 countries and maintain close trilateral security cooperation.
The most recent Freedom Edge exercise was held last September, and this year's is expected to be similar in scale and scope, including maritime missile defense and cyber defense. A JCS official said the number of personnel participating from each country is still under review. This time, the exercise is drawing greater attention following the scaled-back ROK-U.S Freedom Shield exercise earlier this month. While a U.S. Forces Korea official said Friday that UFS and Freedom Edge should not be conflated, one expert says the exercise going ahead as scheduled still carries significance.
Despite concerns over the scale-back, Freedom Edge is going ahead as scheduled. Trilateral security cooperation may have lost some momentum since the start of the second Trump administration, but the exercise shows that the framework established under the Biden administration remains in place and that practical cooperation is continuing.
As with the previous Freedom Edge exercise, a U.S. aircraft carrier may not take part this time, with the Japan-based USS George Washington recently deployed to the Middle East amid the prolonged conflict with Iran. Still, the upcoming exercise is expected to serve as another test of how closely the 3 countries can maintain military coordination amid changing regional security conditions. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
And in the Middle East, Iran says it's preparing a list of prerequisites to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, including a demand for an end to regional war. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
Iran is preparing a list of conditions for reopening the Strait of Hormuz as regional mediators intensify efforts to ease tensions and restore shipping through the key waterway. Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Mohsen Rezai, says mediators asked Tehran to set out its demands with an end to the regional war among Iran's main conditions. Rezai says Iran has also reached an understanding with Oman on a possible shipping corridor through the strait. Under the proposal, vessels would travel through a designated central channel, passing through both Omani and Iranian waters, provided the United States meets Tehran's conditions. Iran and Oman are still working on the details. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have said Tehran will not agree to fully reopen the strait unless Washington lifts what Iran describes as a blockade of its ports, removes sanctions, and provides compensation. At the same time, Qatar is stepping up its mediation efforts. Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani visited Tehran on Thursday for talks with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. It marks the first high-level Qatari visit to Iran since the war began on February 28th. According to Qatar's state news agency, the 2 sides discussed ways to reduce tensions and create conditions for renewed dialogue between Iran and the United States. They also reviewed a proposed phased plan for the Strait of Hormuz, including a temporary shipping corridor and a joint effort to clear mines from the waterway. Sheikh Mohammed stressed the importance of respecting regional sovereignty and ensuring freedom of navigation while calling for continued diplomacy. 이승재, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, SK hynix has broken ground on its first U.S. production facility for high-bandwidth memory, setting the stage for mass production of next-generation chips in Indiana from the year 2029. Our Aichi-Nagoya has more.
Next-generation high-bandwidth memory is a crucial component of the AI industry and will be manufactured in the United States for the first time, with production being handled by a Korean company. SK hynix held a groundbreaking ceremony on Thursday for its next-generation HBM advanced packaging fab in West Lafayette, Indiana. This is the company's first production facility in the United States, with plans to mass-produce AI memory, including next-generation HBM, starting in the third quarter of 2029. At the event, SK hynix CEO Kwang No-jung revealed that the Indiana fab will feature an annual capacity of hundreds of thousands of wafers, highlighting the significance of this production capability.
Here in Indiana, we will build the first HBM advanced packaging facility in the United States. We will provide our customers with a new source of made in US HBM while strengthening the US semiconductor supply chain and contributing to national and economic security.
SK hynix is investing around $4 billion in the Indiana plant. Under a preliminary agreement with the U.S., the company will receive up to $450 million in direct funding and $500 million in loans through the CHIPS Act, a law designed to revitalize the U.S. semiconductor industry through financial incentives. This could be seen as a strategic move by SK hynix to establish a solid foothold in the U.S. and navigate potential trade risk, including semiconductor tariffs. U.S. Senator for Indiana Todd Young, who also led the passage of the 2022 CHIPS Act, has attended the ceremony, emphasizing the critical need for semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S.
And given the role microchips play in powering our economy and securing our nation, and the clear catastrophe that would follow if our supply of these was cut off, why would we ever rely on the goodwill or good fortune of other nations for their fabrication?
SK hynix also partnered with Purdue University, located in the area where the facility will be built, through an MOU to strengthen R&D and recruit talented engineers. Through this new HBM production base in the U.S., SK hynix is expected to solidify its leadership in the global AI semiconductor market. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
Virtual Taekwondo is poised to make its debut as an official medal sport at this year's Asian Games. And in light of this event, our Shin So-won was out to venture into the virtual arena to take a look.
Two athletes face off, trading kicks, blocking attacks, and waiting for the perfect opening. Yet not a single blow physically touches their opponent. Instead, each athlete's avatar is calibrated to reflect their height, gender, and kicking angles, capturing even the subtle movements that translate into a point gauge in the virtual arena. A total of 5 sensors, 2 on each leg, and 1 on my jacket, track every movement of my body, creating my own avatar. Once a VR headset goes on, I'm transported straight back to the virtual battleground. Each bout consists of up to 3 60-second rounds, with the first athlete to take 2 rounds winning the match. Although it is considered an e-sport, trained Taekwondo athletes have a clear advantage as real-world skills determine their performance rather than button controls. 16 athletes representing 8 countries will compete. Among them, South Korea's An Hyang-sik is also set to take part in traditional Taekwondo sparring.
From the outside, it may look like we're just kicking the air, but it demands intense training and stamina. Competing in 2 events is tough, but I'm determined to win both.
By removing weight classes and allowing mixed gender matches, virtual Taekwondo enables athletes to compete on equal footing. Smaller athletes can capitalize on speed and combinations, while taller competitors benefit from their reach, turning physical differences into strategic advantages rather than limitations.
I think understanding distance and knowing when to land your kicks are key to improving performance in an actual match.
Backed by a global Taekwondo network with more than 12 million registered ROK-U.S rank holders, Virtual Taekwondo is now building its own certification courses for match operators. Marking a new frontier for the esports, Virtual Taekwondo blends the physicality of Korean traditional martial arts with AI and virtual reality. Making its Asian Game debut, this sport signals Taekwondo's innovation for future generations while pushing the boundaries of mat-based competition. 신소은, Arirang News, Wuju.
Also in local news, 10 years after it first brought the wartime suffering of Korean comfort women to the silver screen, Spirit's Homecoming is back in theatres, asking audiences to confront a painful history that is becoming harder to hear firsthand. Our Park Chae-ryung has this story.
During Japan's colonial occupation of Korea, many women were forced into sexual slavery. As time passes, the number of survivors able to testify firsthand has shrunken year by year, leaving only 5 so-called comfort women still alive today. Against this backdrop, the 2016 film Spirit's Homecoming, which portrays the suffering of the victims, was recently re-released.
Here at CGV Yongsan, audiences are once again coming face to face with a story first brought to the screen 10 years ago.
Some moviegoers share their thoughts on the film.
I hope this re-release gives more people a chance to see it again and reflect once more on the history of the comfort women.
The problem of the Japanese military sexual slavery system is not a problem of the past, it's connected to reality because there's still women in many parts of the world that experience gender-specific violence and sexual violence. Even quite close to home in Ukraine, there's also a lot of violence against women as a war tactic, so I think it's an issue that we need to continue talking about.
The film is based on testimonies from victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery and depicts the suffering of young Korean girls taken from their homes during the colonial era. When it first hit theaters in 2016, Spirit's Homecoming drew more than 3.5 million moviegoers, bringing renewed public attention to the victims' experiences. A decade later, however, the number of registered survivors still alive has fallen from 47 to just 5. As first-hand witnesses grow fewer, the director of the movie says the film has taken on another role.
A film alone cannot change reality, but a film can serve as a form of cultural evidence. I hope this film will help preserve this painful part of Korea's history and help prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again.
President Lee Jae-myung also marked the film's return in a social media post, calling on the public to remember the painful history and ensure that the victims' stories are not forgotten. 10 years after its first release, Spirit's Homecoming is returning not only as a film about the past, but also as a record for current and future generations. Park Chae-ryung, Arirang News.
Right, at the start of this week, we told you about mobile markets headed to rural areas to offer the elderly there the convenience of shopping for groceries from the comfort of their neighborhoods. Well, our Peg Chu-hee was there to check them out herself.
A small market has opened up in a village in Okcheon. It's a one-ton truck modified into a supermarket, with its shelves stocked with food and other daily necessities. As it settles in, villagers start coming out to see what's on offer.
Today I got flour and rice too. They bring it right to us, so I'm grateful. We old people can't get out, so we're always waiting for them.
This is Hyangsu Mobile Market, and it comes to villages where buying groceries used to mean a trip of 30 minutes or more.
The older residents are really happy with it. Before, buses were hard to get on and didn't come often, and many of them have trouble getting around. Now the truck comes right into the village, and they'll even carry it to the door.
Since July, the truck has made the same rounds through 10 villages every few days, and shoppers pay with a rural basic income card worth 150,000 won, or about $108 a month.
Okcheon is a region facing depopulation, so there just aren't many stores left. We started the mobile market at our center to help boost local spending. We're trying to do our small part to bring people back and get the local economy moving again.
Nationally, fewer and fewer people in the countryside can buy groceries close to home. By 2025, only 22.5% bought them inside their own village, down 12.6 percentage points from 2014.
When you combine a shrinking population with older residents eating less, total food demand in these areas falls. That's why so many businesses and supermarkets have closed down and disappeared, leaving these communities without access to the goods and services they need.
With demand too thin to keep a store opened, the government has been filling the gap, funding mobile markets since 2024 with 9 counties running them as pilot sites. It now plans to bring in more local governments and offer expert consulting to help each one draw up its own operating plan. And on Wednesday, Parliament passed a revision to the country's farming and food law that makes food access a legal responsibility of the government and requires the Agriculture Ministry to survey the problem every 5 years. The government plans to expand the mobile market programs to more counties in the coming years. With new measures on the road, the hope is that more villages like the ones in Okcheon will have somewhere to shop, whether that's a store on the road or a truck that pulls up at the door. 백주희, Arirang News, Okcheon.
This is the world now. In the United States, President Donald Trump wants Lake Ontario to be renamed Lake America. He signed an order to that effect on Thursday as conflict with Canada deepens. The order tells the Interior Department to change the name in official U.S. records immediately. Canada is not expected to recognize the change, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said the lake's name is more than 400 years old and that Canadians will keep calling it Lake Ontario. Lake Ontario sits on the border of the U.S. and Canada. Last year, Trump renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. In the United States, Meta says it has shut down an Iranian operation aimed at influencing people through social media. Meta's report said Thursday it removed Facebook and Instagram accounts tied to operators in Iran. Those accounts were routed through the U.S. or Canada to hide their origin and used artificial intelligence to push posts and make memes about American politics. Some posed as American activists, students, and designers living in cities in the United States and tagged real journalists and politicians in their posts. About 79,000 accounts followed at least one of the Iranian accounts. In the United States, shares in the chipmaker NVIDIA jumped 8.7% on Thursday, its biggest one-day gain since April 2025. The surge added $442 billion to the company's value, the second largest one-day gain ever. Strong quarterly results and a forecast of 70% revenue growth for the 2028 financial year eased fears of cooling AI demand. The rally lifted the wider market. The S&P 500 rose 0.7% and the Nasdaq gained 1.6%. Attention now shifts to Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh, who speaks at Jackson Hole on Friday. In Japan, the artist Yayoi Kusama has died at the age of 97. Her museum said she died in hospital on August 14th and gave no cause. Kusama was known for her dot-covered paintings, pumpkin sculptures, and mirrored rooms. She said she had seen hallucinations of dots and flashing lights since childhood. She voluntarily lived in a psychiatric hospital from 1977 and painted until her final days. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Right now, in the city of Sejong, a heavy rain warning is in effect, and heavy rain advisories are in place for parts of Chungcheongbuk-do and Jeollanam-do provinces, as well as Gwangju. Through this evening, some areas, especially around the capital region, could see sudden showers with up to 50 millimeters of rain. And tomorrow, as we head into the weekend, those rain clouds will spread across the country. For Saturday, most areas could pick up 20 to 60 millimeters. And by Sunday morning, the rain will taper off across the central part of the country. But many areas in the southern regions will still see rain through the day. Tomorrow, even with the rain, some areas could still have tropical nights or tropical night-like temperatures. Seoul will start the day at 24 degrees Celsius and Busan 26 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 30 degrees, Daegu 31 and Gwangju 32 degrees. As the rain moves in, heat wave alerts should gradually be lifted or scaled back. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
해금은 두 줄로 된 현악기인데 저도 처음에 시작하게 된 거는 그 두 줄에서 너무 다양한 소리가 나오는 게 너무 신기했고 일단 해금이 되게 사람의 목소리랑 좀 비슷하다고 많이들 하세요. 줄을 눌러서 이렇게 음을 계속 왔다 갔다 진동하는 그런 형태를 띠고 있다 보니까 애절하다라고 많이 말씀을 해주시는 것 같아요. 이 곡은 제가 좀 오래 좋아했던 친구에 대한 제 여러 감정을 담은 곡인데요. 슬펐던 마음, 혹은 뭐 고마웠던 마음, 이런 여러 가지 감정들을 한데 묶어서 마음이 담긴 곡이라고 할 수 있겠습니다. 현대적인 음악으로 이제 재구성하는 단계를 거칠 때 항상 중요하게 생각하는 거는 음악의 분위기를 해치지 않는 선에서는 전통적인 주법들, 식임새, 이런 전통의 냄새라고 할까요? 맛? 이런 걸 살릴 수 있는 요소들을 좀 집어넣으려고 하는 편이에요. 저는 요새 연주하면서도 스스로가 마음도 편하고 몸도 편안한 음악들을 좀 자주 들려드리고 싶다. 제가 음악으로 위로받았던 것처럼 제가 하는 음악들로 여러분들이 좀 위로받을 수 있는 순간이 있었으면 좋겠다. 그런 무대를 만들려고 노력해야겠다라는 생각을 했던 것 같습니다.
beauty streets to shelves across the US, K-beauty is redefining what the world expects from cosmetics. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective for this Friday, August 28th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. As K-beauty moves from a Korean trend to a global beauty benchmark, South Korea is reshaping everything from luxury skincare and medical tourism to consumer habits, distribution and the next wave of innovation. For more on this, I have Chloe, the French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I also have Juliana with Bloomberg Opinion over in Hong Kong with us. Juliana, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Great to see you.
Chloe, we start here in the studio. I hear you recently covered Seoul Beauty Week. Let's start with that. What was the atmosphere there like?
So it was quite interesting. You know, the K-Beauty weeks and all those kind of festival are always quite happy and festive, obviously. So there was quite a lot of funny games to be able to win samples. So for example, one of them, you just had like to kind of clean sand to be able to find your goods inside. And it's one of the things I think that's really attracting to a lot of people about K-Beauty is how generous it can be in the samples and in being able to try the products, because obviously you never want to get a new product if you are not able to try it before. Sometimes you'll be like, should I take the risk or should I stick to my good old cream that I've been using for the last 5 years? There's also quite a lot of innovation that were shown. That's, I think, the interesting part of this year, where they were really showing off the new stuff. So, for example, new products, new packaging, new colors as well. Like some of the places were really, you could see, like you wanted to take photo of them. That was really, you could see it was designed for social medias, but also the people there, the good thing was this kind of festival is that you're meeting with the people who are creating and selling the brand, so they are more able to talk about the products. And I feel like there was a real want from the participant to be able to discuss with the customers and being able to present new ingredients or new way of putting them and adding them. For example, one of the brand was saying, like, if you want to create your own collagen, actually you should not be drinking collagen, you should be boosting your amino acid production. So they were kind of reshaping the way we're seeing some and the idea we can have on some of the K-beauty stuff. And that was quite interesting. And then in the audience that was there, so there were quite a lot of foreigners, especially influencers, but I was also impressed, so it was on the weekend, but still a lot of families, Korean families coming. So you would see mom, dad, and the kids all together going around and trying the products. So I don't know for which one it was, but it was funny to see that it can also be kind of a family activity to do.
Right, a family affair then. Juliana, K-beauty has overtaken French cosmetics to become the top imported beauty category in the US. How do you suppose is it reshaping the global beauty market?
I think in so many different ways. So last year we saw something we hadn't seen before, which is that the US actually overtook China as the biggest importer of K-beauty. And this is a real watershed moment because for years, China, until last year, China was the biggest overseas market. And you can see why. You know, China, Korea, geographic, cultural kind of proximity, beauty ideals in many ways are very similar, beauty standards, and even skin tones. So it makes a lot of sense that Korean companies were investing a lot in China over many years. But two things kind of changed. About 10 years ago, due to political issues, Korea's decision to install the THAAD missile defense system angered China. So politically and commercially, kind of ties took a cooler kind of turn. And there were fewer, K-pop stars coming to China to perform. But it wasn't just the political kind of distance between the two countries that affected commercial ties at K-beauty. Around the same time, Chinese beauty companies started establishing themselves, launching their own products, in many ways cheaper even than K-beauty. And of course, a lot of things are being sold on the internet, online, and Chinese players know what works on the Chinese internet, on Chinese social media. So I think we've seen this adjustment in China, and on the US side, we're seeing the opposite, which is that K-beauty is absolutely booming on TikTok, which is owned by a Chinese company in Beijing. So doing really well, K-beauty doing really well on US social media, especially with younger people. My daughter is a huge fan of K-beauty, which she's only heard about on social media. And you see brands like Laneige, Medicube, Beauty of Joseon doing really well in the US. And what's really interesting is a lot of these brands do better outside Korea than in Korea. So this is something I learned when I was visiting Seoul on one trip, when the sales associate at Olive Young told me that they only started selling some of these brands because tourists came in looking for it, because these were not brands that were originally kind of targeting Korean customers, even though they were K-beauty products, because as you know, the domestic market is super competitive. So some of these manufacturers thought, okay, where can we get more business? And they decided to look overseas. And when they became really popular on TikTok, then they started selling it at home. So that's been really interesting to see which brands kind of become popular overseas and start to gain more of a following back home in Korea. And obviously, what makes them stand out overseas is the gentle formulations, the botanical ingredients, often vegan formulations, and of course, price. K-beauty products tend to be a lot more affordable in the US than kind of their Western counterparts. And for me, a lot more effective and a lot more user-friendly and much higher quality, right? So good value, good products. Who would not like that?
Right, and speaking about standing out overseas, a UK beauty publication, Chloe, called K-beauty the new benchmark for Western beauty. How are luxury brands actually using Korean beauty technology?
So first of all, I would say like the Western brands in South Korea are nothing new. It's in itself because, like, for example, L'Oreal, that's the French brand, they've been in Korea since 1993. But what's new, what's kind of new is the way they're now using the technologies that are arriving from South Korea and incorporating incorporating them into Western products. And so in this article from Cosmetic Business, what they are saying is that, for example, Nivea has a new sun stick where they are showing off that it's Korean technology and it's really branded as Korean technology. Same if Saint Laurent has a new cushion foundation, and the cushion foundation, you know, the type of foundation that you put through a specific type of application is originating from South Korea. I mean, it's nothing new here in Korea, but the fact that it's been exported and shown off as Korean product is kind of the new thing. So I would say there's two things being used. So the technologies themselves, for example, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that here in Korea, the wands were really the big thing. So electromagnetic wands that would just put on your skin and it would just like pulse the product inside, like kind of very gently massaging the product inside, or bubbles for a very short expiration date product. So you'll have your cream and inside would be bubbles of vitamin C, for example, that you will just like pop up, and so that this way you will have the freshest vitamin C product you could have. So that's the kind of things that will be now more shown off as in coming from Korea rather than just taking it. And then the other thing is also the ingredients. I feel like Centella asiatica, hyaluronic acid, or even niacinamide, or the things that are now flooding the Western markets. And I feel like PDRN is probably the next big one. So, you know, this is the kind of thing when you're living here in Korea and going back overseas, sometimes you'll check those ingredients and be like, oh, I know them, but I know they're quite new here. So this is probably the biggest change.
Right. Juliana, you've also written about Korean beauty medical tourism as glow-mads. That's a combination, of course, of the words glow up and nomad, as they travel to South Korea. What makes Korea such a popular beauty destination, if you will?
Oh, absolutely, social media. I think what's interesting is that for years, when people watched K-drama, looked at K-pop stars with their glowing, flawless complexions, I think people thought, oh, well, if only I use K-beauty products, I could look like that too. But I think the reality is, and I think you might agree with me, is that the reality is people in Korea don't rely just on skincare. Many people go regularly to dermatological clinics, which are, available everywhere in almost every neighborhood. And the prices tend to be quite reasonable. So people go for lasering, mole removal, brightening treatments, HIFU, Botox, what have you, at really reasonable prices. And I think for a long time, this was not something that people outside Korea knew about. But again, due to social media, people became aware of these procedures. And indeed, we're seeing a huge rise in medical tourism into Korea. And I believe last year, it nearly doubled in terms of numbers. I think this is something that's increasingly well known outside the country, especially as the two Kardashian sisters visited last summer. So they are, they've got millions of followers across social media. They were, Instagramming, doing other things, posting throughout their days-long trip. I'm sure they flew, not commercial, on their private jets. And, they showed themselves off getting all these kinds of treatments. We don't know exactly what they got, but they got a lot of treatments. And I think this is just one reason why this industry is becoming better known overseas. But of course, Korea is known not just for beauty treatments. It's known for lots of different kinds of medical treatments. And I think people are getting to know that area as well. And I'm expecting to see much more growth on both sides, both on the beauty and kind of the pure medical side. And I think the country is really preparing for that. And the government is very, very supportive of this.
Right.
And hopefully can accommodate everyone who wants to come visit.
Right. Chloe, another interesting or intriguing, if you will, intriguing trend is the spread of Korea's sun parasol culture to the US. Could you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, so the sun umbrellas are kind of normal umbrellas, rather you're just taking them out when it's not raining, but when you have a lot of sun. So it's kind of a very common view here in South Korea, or mostly in most of the country in Asia, where people will be using them to block the UV and also obviously to get a bit of colder, because you're under the shade, so you'll be have a little bit colder temperatures. And so according to the New York Times, in this article, they were saying that there is a rising numbers of umbrellas in the US. So the reason are multiple. multiple. So the first thing will be obviously social medias, always in this kind of event, like the trends are starting there. But also dermatologist recommendations. So more and more people are aware that actually the UV and exposing your skin to the sun is quite dangerous and potentially harmful. So more and more people are thinking about protecting themselves. And the last thing is obviously the rising temperatures, because when you are having such harsh summer in cities that are definitely not ready for that, you are taking every single degrees you can take off yourself. So why not using a sun umbrella? You know, if you can be like 2 degrees cooler, I'm taking it. So the New York Times actually said that there's a research firm that said the global market for those protection umbrellas in the US is expected to reach $2.9 billion by 2034, and it's up from 1.8 billion in 2025. So I mean, it's an impressive numbers actually. It's not just a small trends and funny trend, but it's kind of taking over in the US. That's quite interesting. And then they're also saying like that we have to be still quite cautious, because obviously those sun umbrellas are not completely UV proof, so you still need to use your sun cream when you're going outside with them. But it's better than nothing.
Right, of course. You used them this summer. It was so hot here in Seoul. Have you tried using a sun
parasol? No, I was lucky enough to not be in Seoul when it was really hot. But I always try to find the shade, yeah, at least.
Me too. Juliana, now there's growing global interest in what's next for K-beauty. Speaking beyond borders, what do you believe is the next big trend, or will become the next big trend?
So I have to say I'm more of a business journalist than a pure beauty journalist. But you know, I think the treatments that are available in Korea itself that are massively popular, both with locals and increasingly tourists, this is something for which there is demand overseas, but different regulatory rules and other things I think might make it difficult for those treatments to travel overseas. For example, Regerin shots, right? So I've not had that. I keep wanting to try, but I've heard this is very painful, so I kind of chicken out. But at some point, you know, I would like to if I don't chicken out. So things like that, I don't think can really travel outside Korea, because it would have to be regulated by, you know, for example, the FDA, because these things are kind of injected by doctors a lot of times. But that said, I think some of the devices, Medicube has a very popular device. Some of these devices, I think, might become more and more popular. I think there's less regulation around them because they're not, strictly speaking, medical products. And on the kind of beauty and skin care side of things, what I would like to see a lot more of from K-beauty is actually products, you know, hair and scalp products. I think K-beauty is already fantastic for skincare, but we have skin on our heads as well. And I think that's a very under-addressed market. L'Oreal, for example, I think is starting to acknowledge this segment more. I think I remember one of the executives saying on their most recent call that they are getting into this area more because of GLP-1s, actually. Weight loss medication can change people's hair. And I think this is a market that's ripe for disruption. And I think this is something that K-beauty can really offer, because you know, we have skin on our faces, but we have skin on our heads. And, you know, why do we not care for it in the same way with specialist formulas that target that kind of skin? I mean, this is something I'm looking for myself as well, you know, just to keep, you know, my skin healthy kind of everywhere. And I think this is an area that is ripe for kind of K-beauty to disrupt. And I think this is an area that it should kind of lean into and develop a lot more.
Right, Chloe, I agree with you as well. Juliana. Chloe, Sephora stores here in the US, they recently introduced the Olive Young K-beauty edit. How important is expanding local distribution so that consumers can discover and buy the latest K-beauty products?
So I think it's mostly important, as you say, to discover them, because for now, as a foreigner, if you're in a country where there's not this Olive Young selection in Sephora's, for example, how can you discover K-beauties? Mostly through, obviously, the Hallyu, so the cultural wave, K-drama, K-pop stars. That also some of brands are introducing themselves in other countries. I know that some brands, for example, Skin 1004, has opened a shop in the US, for example, but not all of them can do that because it's kind of a risky move, obviously, all the time. And so how do you get your products then when, even if you discover some of them, you need to come to Korea, or you need to have friends taking a trip to Korea for you? More seriously, like, products are still being imported in all of those countries, but there's always the problem of you have to go through specific groups and you have a smaller selection, or you go through the Korean brands, but then import fees can be crazy and over the roof. And again, like the idea that the Korean products and K-beauty is kind of not overpriced, then if you go through taxes and customs, then it can double the price of a product very easily. So you have kind of a limited choice, and then cost will make way more competition for those products. So that's why it's important for customers, and it's important also for K-beauty brands to be able to show themselves and export themselves in a more available way outside of Korea. So we have Sephora and Olive Young collaboration. There's also Amore Pacific that's been in Europe as well. And so it's good for the customers because they can see more products and discover more products, obviously. And it's also good for the brands making the products themselves, because it's hard if they are smaller, if they're not Amore Pacific or if they're not Olive Young. Obviously, it's harder to know the right regulation, make sure that your products are all branded in every single countries or areas you're going to, figuring out by yourself, or to export them, where to sell them. So that's the good thing of being able to have those partnerships. And there's also a thing of the Korean government through the Ministry of Science is also helping those smaller companies, like with Beauty Play. Actually, it's a specific space where you have the physical here in Seoul where tourists can come and discover those products, but there's also, more importantly, I think, a very legal base and help for those smaller companies to be able to find a way to export overseas. And it's ultimately good for K-beauty in itself, because there's the export for the United States, for example. They've been raising plus 41.5% in 2025 compared to last year, and exportation in total were a record for 2025, and from what we're seeing, it might be another record this year as well. So this is mostly due to the fact that K-beauty is expanding in a very important way.
Right, and speaking about exports, Juliana, there are pundits who believe that the Trump administration's tariffs could become a new variable for K-beauty. What are your thoughts?
For sure. It's definitely something that the industry should factor in. I remember last year when it was unclear what the U.S. tariffs on Korea as a whole were, that my Reddit kind of communities kind of blew up. People were buying huge amounts of K-beauty products because they weren't sure what the tariffs were going to be, and they were hoarding. There were lots of people making massive hauls, massive online or offline hauls, because they weren't sure what was going to happen to the price. Now we know more or less what the tariffs are. It's significant for sure, but given the kind of the price differentials between Korean and American or Western brands, I would say even with the tariff, Korean products still tend to be a lot more affordable, especially if you're buying it online on any of these online sites that send directly from Korea. What I've noticed is that some of these websites have either raised their prices or they've raised their shipping minimums. So definitely they are accounting for this. And I've seen people online say that if they're ordering direct from Korea, then they do need to pay a tariff or a tax, on top of kind of the price that's shown on the website. So for sure, prices have gone up. But, for fans of K-beauty, this is something that they accept because, they're otherwise not able to get formulas at this price and at this quality, even if the price is going up. And in general, it's still much more competitive than Western or American products. So most people just kind of, absorb this cost. What's interesting is Olive Young has also opened on the West Coast of the U.S. And I believe they hold their products in the U.S. So I imagine the products are a lot more expensive than if you, certainly buy in Korea. But if they hold the products in the U.S., then there isn't an obvious extra tariff increase for the consumer. Although I believe most of the time, products I see in Korea, if I see them overseas, not in Hong Kong, but if I see them, in the West and other places, the price is usually more than double anyway. So I think absolutely tariffs are a factor, but I think this is something that K-beauty lovers are happy to absorb.
Right, and perhaps all the more reason to come here to South Korea to buy them then. Jillian, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. Right, and Chloe here in the studio, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, from Seoul to the rest of the world, K-beauty is no longer simply a trend. It's a global force shaping how we think about beauty, innovation, and the future of the industry. That's all from us this week. Have a great weekend. Do join us again, same time next Monday.
오늘은 대한민국 임시정부를 이끌었던 김구 선생님의 백범일지를